I think that while I'm not denying my heritage, I think that one of the things that we're missing the entire boat on is the fact that the issue is not whether we should rise up and fight the white man with violence here in this country. Mr. Malcolm has mentioned the struggle of races, the struggle of mankind throughout the world. The white man, George Washington, who was a warrior, the individuals who said, "Give me liberty or give me death," and this all is good. This is very good, but it does not suffice for the particular problem that we are faced with. We're not faced with a problem that confront two countries. We're faced with a problem that's internal. I just happen to have an investment in this country. So do all the other Negroes who have lived here, who were born here, and will probably be here for the rest of their lives. Whenever an individual is called upon to defend the country and the country's concept, whether it's practiced or not, we're expected to do so, and we do so willingly. I think that we would be defeating our purpose. I think that the Negro would completely defeat his purpose if he allowed himself to develop such a hatred attitude that he would begin to fight internally with the people in the country. I think that one of the most important things is that if we are going to survive as a nation, if we're going to elevate ourselves and remain on the status that we are considered leaders of the rest of the world, then we're going to have to do it with all the people in the country. I think that while I agree that segregation, discrimination is wrong, while I agree that man cannot limit others until he first limit himself, I think that the means by which the students have undertaken to pit themselves against these laws of segregation, for truly in the South there has been established a pattern of segregation, and to remove any pattern in the South or any pattern in any part of the country, in my estimation, does not show cowardness. It does not show a lack of manliness. In my estimation, it shows more calm, cool, calculated intelligence than trying to meet these obstacles with violence, which is, in my estimation, would assuredly meet with defeat. We have another thing to consider. We have approximately 20 million Negroes in the United States. Our net national product is approximately $20 million. We're $20 billion, which means that we control a very small portion of the nation's wealth. And I can't conceive of using such a small group of people and such a small amount of money, since our basic society is based on a capitalistic form of government, a form of government that has to use money for its own good. I can't conceive of how anyone would say that we should go out and use violence when I think that this would defeat our purpose.
Mr. Baldwin, you've talked about a projected time when both the pride and the prejudice of race might be eliminated. In view of what Mr. Malcolm has said, do you feel that you could deny this kind of heritage that he speaks of and only look forward to that projected time?
No. Let me try to make myself clear. I think in the first place there's some disagreement between Mr. Malcolm X and myself as to what this heritage is, and I want to go back to that in a minute. Something else at the moment bothers me. That I think there's a great deal. There's not much clarity in this question of violence from my point of view, from where I sit. Whether or not, no matter what Mr. McCummins wants, or no matter what Mr. X wants, no matter what I want, I believe, for example, that one of these days, and maybe tomorrow, Birmingham, Alabama will probably blow up. And if Birmingham blows up, it will not just stretch to Atlanta, it will stretch to Boston. There's a kind of fuse, there's a kind of, there's an undercurrent, there's something which unites all the Negroes in this country, so that what happens in Birmingham can blow up Harlem. It has happened before. And unless we are extremely swift and miraculously swift, it will happen again. I take violence, I'm trying to say this, I take it as given. I think it is coming in any case. What exercises my mind is what happens then. in the first place, this country, in its position in the world now, is extremely precarious position in the world now. The situation of the Negro here is different from that of the Jews in Germany, let us say, 20 or 30 years ago. In that, if Birmingham should blow up, if there should really erupt in America this week, really real racial violence, it would have repercussions all over the world. I'm afraid we have to face this fact, that when the Jews are being slaughtered in Germany in the very beginning, no one seemed to care. Millions of Jews crossed the world, and boatloads of them, and no country would let them in. But the American Negro has something working for him in this context, or the country has something working against it, which I don't think he can afford. I don't think that if I use Birmingham because it's the worst city I've ever seen, and absolutely indefensible that it should exist in this country, the reactions in Johannesburg, South Africa, and all over the African continent, and in Latin America, because we've always treated the Latin Americans, whether we admit this or not, we've always treated them as though they were not white. We've never considered them as being white people, which is one of the reasons we are having so much trouble with them. And, I must say that is one of the things I meant when I said the price that the white man has paid for his willful blindness may prove to be more than the bill is coming in. But I want to get back to this question of identity, because it seems to me this is really where all the questions are. Mr. Malcolm X disagrees with the word Negro, and I can see his point. I confess it doesn't at the moment much interest me, but that may be my fault. What I am concerned about, though, is the actual history of Negroes in this country. I think one has got to face the fact that it has been one of the ugliest histories in the history of the West. But if one can face this fact, there's another fact which I think one has got to face, which is also one of the most remarkable histories that we know of. And I don't think I can be confused any longer with, I'm not talking about all the good things that white people did, for the poor darkies and all that jazz. I'm talking about the effect of this experience on the people who underwent it, the masters and the slaves, what it did to them. I would be a very different person if I were not the descendant of a slave. And I might be something, I might be I might be something absolutely incredibly marvelous, but this is a myth. This is romance. In fact, I am the descendant of a slave, and this is one of the things that I have to deal with because it is true. And I don't think that it has to be a badge of shame. Negroes are not the only slaves. We are not the only descendants of slaves. I think that the confusion here is whether or not when I can't eliminate one half of my ancestors. My grandmother was raped, let us say. This is a fact I have to face. This means that I'm no longer a pure African, and that my relationship to white people is not that of a Congolese to Belgium, and cannot be, no matter how hard I try to make it that. My relationship to white people is dictated by my mother's relationship to them, my father's, by the fact that my grandmother nursed children who grew up to lynch her children, that my father's fathers were always under the heel of some benevolent white man, and the whole myth of this experience has come into being in the country, which is at its highest seen in Falkland and its lowest seen in Margaret Mitchell. Now, I don't think that we can be liberated from this history until we are willing to deal with it. And this means that I have to deal with it as well as any white man in the country has to deal with it. Now, there's really too much and too little to say. What is the issue here? Malcolm X wants us to act like men, and it seems to me, one of the things that I object to here, I don't think that the fact that white people have done what they have done, Patrick Henry is not one of my heroes. I'm sorry. Most of the American heroes have never been in my Hall of Fame. I don't see any reason for me, at this late date, to begin modeling myself on an image which I've always found, frankly, to be mediocre and not a standard to which I myself could repair. I don't think that black men now should be, because white men have committed these crimes, that black men should do the same thing. I think that there is something absolutely insidious, even if I cannot make this absolutely clear, there's something, to my mind, always terribly insidious in the whole question of race. the white man's racial characteristics of which the white man claims to be so proud.